Welcome. We are back. Oh, look at my shirt. It's half invisible. Today I was really honestly at a loss. I had a few ideas last week for what I wanted to talk about this week. I was like, what is something that I really, feel like would be a good follow-up to talking about anger and stuff like that. And then I was like, I don't know. It just feels like such an off week, and I just feel like, I don't know. What do I do? So I decided to talk about whoa. So I decided to talk about what? Oh my God. I can't stand when my brain does this. I've decided to talk about meditation. That took a lot. So I got in late last night, and I slept. I felt like I slept pretty good, but I just felt like this morning I couldn't wake up. And when I woke up, like my head had that like swollen congestion feeling again. Not like I'm actually congested, just like my sinuses are dry maybe or something. I don't know, but I got pretty decent sleep. I just feel like I'm a little bit off. So it is what it is. It's a Monday. It's partially the reason too why I wanted to talk about doing this talk about meditation today, because it's helpful. It's helpful getting your mind back into place. It's helpful doing things that you should be doing that you really want to recollect yourself. And what better time than when your mind's acting up on you, right? Like that sort of thing. Yeah, so I wanted to talk today about meditation, because it's hard for a lot of people, and today's main focus is going to be I wanted to talk about like dispelling some of the myths around meditation in general, and some of the ideas that people get wrong about it, and just kind of change the mentality about it, and talk about how people are always like, I don't have time, I don't feel like I can do it, things like that, to bring your awareness that you can do it, you can find the time, you can find things to do. So what we have going on here today is talking about some of the common misconceptions with meditation. And one of my goals for this week, for me personally, is going to be to incorporate meditation into my everyday practice. I often find reasons to not meditate, and I'm gonna say something that's one of the myths behind people not doing it, and I'm not good at it. But really, the truth of that is that I'm just not willing enough to incorporate it into my everyday life. But now I'm getting to a point where I realize I need it in my everyday life. I need to start incorporating that into my everyday life. It'll help me get recalibrated, reconnected, and just get in tune with myself a little bit deeper and get a better understanding of things. And when I do meditate, I do feel better. I do feel good and a lot more clarity than I do if I haven't meditated. So I just wanted to express that as being somebody who has a hard time finding the time to meditate, or being somebody who has a difficult time sitting there and concentrating and quote unquote clearing your mind or whatever. That's where I'm coming from with this entire conversation about meditation, is coming from like things that I've done, things that I plan on implementing to help me continue with the practice after this week. I want to talk about things like how we, what are some wacky ways that people meditate? What are some whacked out things that people have experienced meditating? Things like that. I want to talk about how my experiences with meditation in the past and different ways that I've learned to meditate because of how I grew up and having ADHD and things like that, on how to build on those skills further from beyond this week, to kind of combine everything and talk about it, and really grow that to last beyond the week. That's my goal. So some of the very common misconceptions about meditation, the first and foremost that I would like to discuss is that it's not a fix-all. And I know so many people feel like it is for whatever reason, And so many people have this idea that like, oh, if I meditate, my entire life will be fixed. Everything will be fine and everything will become beautiful and loving and whatever. Meditation is the path or the vehicle to take that path to gain clarity. That's what meditation is. Meditation is not to solve your problems. It's not to cure yourself. It's not to, even though that there's scientific evidence that a lot of this stuff is, there's a lot of scientific evidence to support that a lot of this stuff does happen as a byproduct of meditation. It's not the direct effect that you're trying to get. Literally all you're trying to get in meditation is that peace of mind for 5 or 10 minutes every single day. That peace of mind to somebody in one of the videos I'm going to show towards the end of the stream, somebody had talked about it's that 5 or 10 minutes to confront that voice in your head. And that's what I really like seeing it that way, because coming from my perspective, I've often, I think I talked about it last week. I always have that voice in the back of my head that no matter what, it just won't shut up. It won't stop. And, the same thing with intrusive images. That's the part of it that I talked about last week. Like, picturing a peaceful environment, then I'd have an intrusive image or whatever. And I had a hard time getting control of that. And, it still happens once in a while, but I've grown very good at working with it and trying to work through it. And learning all about this process of, am I failing at meditating? Am I not doing it right? Like, is there something wrong with me? And then you come to find out that, like, no, you're in your process. Like, a lot of this is just the beginning of your process, and it comes and goes, but it's your path to find clarity, to help clear your mind a little bit, to shake out the cobwebs up there and kind of just see what's going on. And one of the other speakers that I learned from, he was juggling, and he said, he took one of the balls, and he's like, it's, what we tend to do is throw the balls up in the air and move them around and do all this other stuff that's going on inside of our head. And he took this one ball, and he's like, this is the thought you are observing from an outside view. And he held it out in front of him. And he said, this is your thought that you're observing from an outside view with meditation. And he goes, now remove the meditation process, and he throws it in the mix of everything. And he's like, and now that's the only ball amongst all these other things that you're focused on that's taking all your attention, all your energy. And what meditation does is pinpoint the focus on that and just try to view it from a non-judging, loving perspective, and kind of seeing it from an outer body experience of that situation. But that's mainly what it is. It's to help you refocus your mind and resharpen your mind. It's not always what you think it is. A lot of people picture meditation as like sitting on a mountaintop with your legs crossed and your hands in the Om position, and that's just not what it is for most people, especially these days. You have businessmen, you have companies, you have the likes of Google and some other major corporations who have included meditation as a part of their everyday workday. And they're not doing those same things. They do different types of meditations in, like, say, yoga, or going for a walk, or different types of things like that. And if you talk to a monk, maybe a little bit of their time is spent sitting on a slab or on the floor and just doing nothing. Like, that's a minimal time. What they are doing is learning how to appreciate nature, learning how to appreciate all the living things around them, learning to feel everything all at the same time and yet nothing at all, and let it just flow, right? That's mainly what meditation is all about, is observing this flow from an outside perspective, and not a judgment or anything like that, like I said before. You don't need years of practice for it. You can literally start right now. You can literally start this very second. You close your eyes and you just start. You just start observing what's going on in your mind. And that's step number one, really. it grows beyond that, and it's a learning process. Like I said, it doesn't take years and years of practice. I mean, the more you do, the better you get at it. But like ultimately, it's mainly just you starting. That's the biggest thing, just starting and initiating these practices or whatever. And if you find a way that works for you or doesn't work for you, you can always switch it up, or you can just stick with it and go with it. And after a while, you'll start becoming a master of it, and you'll start finding different ways to really initiate meditating. And the other misconception behind it too is that you have to do it for hours, and that's not true. The part of it that people think you have to do it for hours and hours and hours, most of the time they don't recommend that. Especially if you're just starting off, they do not recommend that you do it for that long. They recommend 5 or 10 minutes. I've heard people recommend 2 or 3 minutes. It's just that. It's just, getting into the practice and taking those steps. But you could do 10 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour. Can you do hours? Sure. But nobody has that time. Unless you are like a monk off in the mountains somewhere, nobody has that time. Although, when you consider the different types of meditations that there are, like living in the woods, for example, all of your environment is that time. All of your environment is that time, because most likely you're the type of person who loves living in the woods, and you use your hands for things, and you build things, or you do whatever to survive, right? And gathering food or whatever. And there's a certain level of peace to all that most of the people that I know that live that lifestyle, they enjoy that. They look for that all the time, and they love that. And I think it's very important to recognize these different modalities, but we'll get into those another day. To about what different types of meditations and things like that. But you don't have to do it for hours. It can be your whole life. It can be your day. It can be whatever, but it doesn't have to be. It's not about thinking and doing nothing. I kind of touched on that a little bit before. It's not about any of that. It's about, like I said, observing things that are going on in your head from the outside, and not, focusing on one or two things or whatever, just kind of letting things flow. And it's not trying, because that's where I used to fail a lot. I used to fail in meditation by trying to clear my mind. And I was like, because I got my idea from movies and stuff like that, as a kid. So, I'd be like, oh man, the monk says clear your mind and find your inner peace and stuff like that. Or, the hero of the movie says that. And, I felt like such a failure as a kid trying to do these things. So I was like, wow, I will never find that inner power, because if that's what meditation is, I can't do it, But it's not about doing that. It's not about thinking and just trying, like thinking nothing, doing nothing, and those are very false images, and they're very poisonous images to people who want to actively learn how to meditate and actually take part in their own process. It's very detrimental because of those ideas that people put in your head. And, most of these ideas, if you went to most of these places where this stuff happens in real life, you'd realize they would laugh you off. They'd be like, that's silly. Nobody can do that. That's impossible. So, like I said, it's about pinpointing or just letting thoughts flow. And if there's one that's present, practicing, bringing it closer to you, observing it, releasing it, things like that. There's a lot more to it than just clear your mind, It's not about being still or quiet. That goes along with kind of like thinking nothing and doing nothing. A lot of people think that you can't have music, or that you can have music, but it has to be a specific type. A lot of people think that you have to just not move and be present with everything that's going on, which you do. You do have to be present with everything that's going on, but not so much that you can't do anything else. There's different ways to breathe and meditate and refocus yourself without having to sacrifice movement. You know, some people some people exercise, and that's kind of their form of meditation, you know. And it's because when your body's doing something, you know, a true meditative artist can know that there's a disconnect between your mind and your body. And when it should be unified, you can separate them at the same time. So, you know, that's a big part of it too. And a lot of people think, again, going back to the sitting on a mountaintop, that you need to be in a specific position or a specific room or a specific building or something to meditate. And that's simply not true either. It's not situational like that. They just basically recommend however you can comfortably sit and comfortably breathe. That's how you do it, you know. You don't have to practice getting into these awkward, uncomfortable positions. And there's a lot of studies within like the meditative field and things like that about how certain leg positions can increase blood flow and do all that stuff. But you don't have to concern yourself with that. If you're a layman who is just going to use it in your everyday life, all you're looking for is a peace of mind and a piece of reconnection. You know what I mean? And you don't have to really bring it any further than that. If you're going to make it your life's practice, sure, work up to that one day. That's fine. But, you know, I don't know anybody that's to that level, you know. Those were the things that I wanted to kind of debunk in the first place. Using meditation in stressful moments to prove a point almost. It's to say that regardless of what situations you're in, like the craziness of yesterday leading into the insanity of this morning and whatever, you can still use these practices. And it's to prove to you that no matter what situation you're in, and as hopeless as it may feel, it's important to stop and take these steps to try to get yourself into this routine. Because, obviously, of stuff we're going to talk about in a minute, but because this is the way that you build those new neural pathways. You have the option to give up, or you have the option to change the results, right? You have the option to change what's going to happen in the end. The practice of meditation can be extremely tricky, especially when there's so much craziness going on in your everyday life. Say you have sick parents or sick in-laws or sick family members or kids or work or, you know, alternating schedules, or, you know, you're barely scraping by with your bills, or, you know, whatever's going on in your personal life. You know, and there's crazier situations too, but thousands upon millions of infinite possibilities of what could be happening. But the point is that, you know, to break down these moments and to be able to understand them differently and work with them differently inside yourself. That's the point of meditation that I want to talk about today. In an article entitled "The Science and Practice of Staying Present Through Difficult Times" by Ed Hallowell at mindful.org, it goes on to say that in a large trial of MBRP mindfulness trained patients, they drank and used significantly less than those who were treated with cognitive behavioral approaches. And a control group who attended 12-step and psychoeducation groups, the author of the study concludes that the mindfulness was the most successful approach, especially over the longer term, because it enabled patients to monitor and skillfully cope with discomfort associated with craving or having a negative effect. A similar study with smokers found that a mindfulness training was more than 5 times as effective as a standard smoking cessation training program, as measured by abstinence from cigarettes after 4 months, or 31% compared to 6%. Another study has suggested that mindful people are more able to tolerate their own distress rather than react in harmful ways. So why did I include that in there? Well, a lot of people, including myself, used to use or still use substances or some sort of what they consider minor substitute for meditation. And most famously, that's something along the lines of smoking cigarettes. But there's also a very common use of drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana, for example, things like that, or harder drugs even. And what they're saying here, I'll put the link to the article in the description below. What they're saying here is that through teaching people mindful practices and giving up these chemicals, they were able to first and foremost stop the addiction, stop the use and abuse of these chemicals, and stop the reoccurrence of relapses, stop the going back to using these substances. Able to monitor and skillfully cope with their discomfort associated with these cravings, they were able to completely cut them out of their lives. Most of them were successful, but obviously there's still some that had issues. But it proves the point that meditation and mindfulness are very powerful tools. And one of my first steps, that's why I didn't do like mindfulness first as a topic, because one of my first steps, it was to be able to recognize my emotions and recognize how I react to things and how I interact with the world around me. And that is considered mindfulness, but it builds up to mindfulness in a very important way, because sometimes people can think that they have mastered mindfulness and they don't really have any facilities to feel how they feel or notice how they affect other people around them, for example. So mindfulness can be very tricky if you're not more in tune with what's going on. So I'm trying to utilize it more when my kids are around, at work, in traffic, use cautiously with that one, of course, and other situations in my life where I feel like I don't have control or don't have that much control. And in everyday life, with everything going on all the time, getting those few minutes just to collect yourself into your breath and be a bystander to the reality around you, watching, observing, being one with and yet separate from everything around you, and just being, is the key to meditation. And that's why it's an important precursor to mindfulness, is because you get into the practice of being mindful. Doesn't mean that you're aware necessarily. It's a portion of it, but it also means being aware of just the flow of things, being able to separate yourself and just be one with the situations that are around you. I am in this world, but I am not of it. Like that type of thing. It's kind of like that, where you can observe everything from an outside view and a non-judgmental view and a loving, respectful view. And you get a whole different perspective on what the situation, even if it has nothing to do with you, of what the situation is. In those times of feeling lost, hopeless, angry, depressed, manic, whatever the emotion that may be standing in for you, those are the hardest but most important times to utilize meditation however you can. It's important to do yourself a favor of building up the tools, because no matter how difficult it may seem, it's easily 10 times the benefit of it in the end. The process can actually feel quite painful, but in that pain or discomfort, whatever you want to call it, is where the magic really happens. When you actively engage in something like discomfort, with something like discomfort, it creates new neural pathways that redirect your brain to say that the feeling doesn't mean to stop. Instead, you can build a path that gets your brain into the mode of addressing that discomfort so that you can have a better life. So that means basically, it's not in a process of avoiding the feeling, like along with that study, the people who are using drugs and alcohol and things like that to avoid feeling something, or or helping their minds slow down, quote unquote, or like doing something like that. That's something that I used to use it for. And once I discovered that meditation can do the same thing, then it was easier for me to drop those chemicals and that stuff that was involved with it. And that's what this is saying, building those new neural pathways to address things in a different manner. It's not much different than removing a thorn from your skin. Would you rather throw some cream on it and a Band-Aid and hope it works, leaving it there to still sit there and fester, the problem's still there? Or would you rather remove that thorn, even if it hurts at first, and properly clean and dress the wound, knowing that you have addressed and fixed the issue, and that nothing's going to come from that? It's done, it's over, it's going to heal, right? That's the exact same situation that we're talking about. So one step that I think the other one, somebody used the example of when I was training through IIN, one of the instructors used the example of sitting on a thumbtack. Well, it causes pain, but in sitting on the thumbtack, you're not going to remove the chair. You know what I mean? You're not going to just completely avoid that, or you're not going to just throw a Band-Aid on it and hopefully it goes away. You're going to remove the thumbtack, right? Because that's the source of your problem. That's the source of the pain. So in meditation, that's addressing it in the same way. You're addressing the source of the pain. You're addressing the source of the discomfort, and you're learning how to work with it in a different way. One step that I found very helpful is what I call mind-body pairings. In holistic practices, you realize that the body works in parallel, that sometimes you don't notice until you partake in practices like meditation. You can be stressed out at work, and once you just took a moment to take a breath and feel that go through your body, you notice a little indigestion, or since you're taking that breath and activating your parasympathetic nervous system, maybe your indigestion goes away. Maybe you get tense when somebody comes near you, or when you go into a meeting, or something along those lines, whatever the situation calls for. And wouldn't it be great if you can work through that and realize where your stress is localized and even fix that? And you get that association of like, oh wow, whenever I'm in this situation, I notice that feeling of back pain or leg pain or shoulder pain or something like that, headaches, migraines, anything like that. It's all very relatable to situations outside of your body. There are associated points in the body that are relative to certain situations, mostly used in practices like Ayurveda and things like that, based on what you're repressing, expressing, feeling, etc. Those feelings manifest often in physical relation to the body, and that's why it's so important to practice. And that's I think they called it the law of parallels. So, the process of where to start with these situations, especially in really tough moments, is just at the beginning. The most important thing that I'm going to keep saying, and that I'm going to keep bringing it back to always with anything: you're overexcited, you're depressed, you're sad, you're mad, you're angry, whatever the situation is, the first thing I'm always going to tell you is bring it back to your breath. First and foremost, bring it back to your breath. Even when your focus is elsewhere, or you're feeling some extreme way, your breath is your emergency response measure when it comes to starting the change within you. So focus on your breath however you can. Even if it's your normal breaths and you're simply observing them, that's beautiful. It'll still work, I promise. You even do it without even thinking about it. Whenever you take a sigh or just a deep breath of relief or whatever, that's your body trying to activate your parasympathetic nervous system and trying to get that calm response out of you. When you feel that work, you can stop there and get back to reality if you want to do that. Again, just going back a couple of seconds, a lot of people think that you have to focus on breath work in order to get your body to calm down, and that's not necessarily true. Depends on your level of concentration, your focus, your situation, whatever's going on. Obviously, if you're driving, you can't close your eyes and take deep breaths and only focus on that, right? So what you can do, even with your eyes open and observing the environment around you, you can just notice how your breath feels. While you're breathing normally, just be like, wow, that's pretty cool, and acknowledge it in some positive way. And that'll be enough to bring enough of your attention to that breath in order to separate yourself from the situation that is stressing you. And you'll notice that after a couple of seconds of doing that, you already feel incrementally better. Obviously, if you have the time and practice, or you try to work your way up to being able to take deeper, more mindful breaths, breathing through the diaphragm and things like that. So yeah, even if it's your normal breath and you're simply observing these breaths, that's what you need to do. When you feel that work, you can stop there and get back to reality, like I said before, or continue on to the next step, which is to acknowledge what's happening in the moment to elicit this response. The reason for this is twofold. It's to establish the building blocks of your new neural pathways or connections, and to pair the situation of what's happening with the reaction of breathing, and to begin your process of reverse engineering the situation. If you notice yourself taking a breath and you want to leave it there, that's fine. That's up to you. This whole process is about you. But if you want to take it further and understand why you're feeling the certain way that you're feeling, or why you're experiencing that need to take that breath in that moment, then this is the step that we're on. if you want to continue with that, just like I said, acknowledge what's happening from a non-judgmental view. There's no emotion paired. There's no anything going on. Say you're in a fight with somebody or something is happening. You just avoided a car accident or something. Acknowledge what happened. Try to leave the emotion out of it. Try to leave everything out of it. That part will come, but for now, just acknowledge what the situation was without judgment. There is no, oh, he cut me off because he's an asshole or anything like that. A car came in front of me. We almost hit. I got stressed out for a couple minutes and just, there's my breath. Let's get back to the breath again. That's all it takes to initiate this second portion of it. And then once you kind of get used to that process of just pairing your breath with these processes or these emergency situations or whatever, or whatever you're feeling in that moment, you can stop there and you can just ride that out. Or this, like I said before, this may be a step-by-step situation where you need to practice it a few times before you get it to where you feel better or comfortable. However you need to proceed is fine. If you choose to proceed beyond the awareness of what's happening, still focusing on your breath, always keep that in mind through every one of these steps. Try to scratch the surface a bit. Try to allow yourself without judgment and with love to feel your feelings. What are you going through in that moment? What are you experiencing? What do you remember? How did you feel? The key here is to focus on you. That's it sounds selfish, but it's very crucial at this step. The process is for you to be more comfortable within your own self, to get to know yourself better. And a nice side effect is showing up as your fully in tune self for the world. So that's the important key behind this step, is to focus on you and how you feel, what's going on in your body. Now we kind of get into the heavier stuff. Once the surface is scratched and you're, feeling and observing your feelings, then comes the flood of feelings that, or something related to that you didn't know was there because, well, by now you've trained yourself inadvertently to not feel those feelings, or you have that wall up for whatever reason, whether it's self-preservation or self-defense or you're scared of something or whatever. It comes from all different things. It can come from your upbringing, your social pressure, your interpretations of what others will feel about you. Whatever it may be will come out once you start scratching that surface and getting a better understanding of what you felt in that moment. There's far more behind it. I promise you that. This can be a painful process, just to give you that heads up, because it's a lot of, I associate it, not to go back to Marvel Comics too much, but I associate it to one of the comic books that I had read having to do with the Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer was a character who went around and helped this other character, Galactus, find planets to consume. He turned it around. He became a good guy, and he fought against Galactus. And then one day he realized that he was very apathetic. And he realized that he had almost no emotion when it came to saving people, even though he knew it was the right thing to do. So he went back to the source of his power, which was Galactus, the guy he used to help. And he said, what did you do to me? And Galactus said, I covered your emotions. I took them away so that you wouldn't feel the pain of the burden of what I sent you to do, which was consuming planets. And so he said, you have no right to do that. And I want my emotions back. I want my memories back. I want all of that stuff returned to me. I'm the rightful owner. It's my burden to bear. And so he gave it back. And once he scratched that surface of knowing that there's something beyond that, a whole flood of emotions came over him, and he was almost broken by it because, obviously it was an extreme situation where he's gone through civilizations and stuff like that. But it's relative to this, because once you scratch that surface, you're going to start seeing stuff that you didn't know was even there behind that veil of, the initial reaction, trying to think of like a pretty easy example. Say you're in a fight with somebody, and you are going through these steps of kind of trying to activate these meditations in the moment, right? Your breath, how you're feeling, what's going on. And in this process, you start to realize, like, oh, we're fighting because we're angry with each other, but there's so much more that's built up behind this that's pushing me to react this way over such a small thing, something like that. This is almost kind of like a phase 2 of your feeling step, because once those floodgates come crashing down, you will feel very uncomfortable and overwhelmed, lost or confused, but stay the course and don't give up. That's the point behind this step. Stay the course and don't give up, because you'll survive it, and it'll lead to a way better situation than what you're in now. It'll lead to stopping this cycle from happening, because you'll start to notice the cycles and repetitions and things like that too. The key here again is to just observe with patience, love, and respect for yourself, how you're feeling. It's almost like, for lack of a better way to put it, let the feelings happen to you. Let it happen. And, just stand back and observe without judging yourself or judging what the situation is again, and just see all this stuff come out and recognize it for what it is. A passing sensation or feeling, right? And then once you get beyond that, you're pretty much, it's like you're through the appetizers now, and now you're getting to the real stuff. You're at the main course of the meal. It's another level of discomfort in testing yourself. There's a theme behind this whole situation. It's literally that throughout this entire process, a new level of testing your own self. It's about discovering what came from, what surrounded, and what preceded the feelings. How did you feel about them? Did they serve you? What did they do or not do for you? And how did they make you respond, or how did they instigate a response from you? This is a kind of form of like scanning for connections that you didn't realize were there. It's a way to strengthen that neural bridge that you're in the process of building. Because what you can discover is that what you were initially feeling a certain way about something, but you discover that you felt that way because you lacked insight into yourself or the situation fully. For example, like feeling disrespected, but you discovered you were really just scared or nervous, and it clouded your mind to the situation, and you thought something completely different. The next logical step, or dessert, as I would like to call it, is to keep it or junk it. And this is kind of like the step where you kind of just filter out everything that you don't need. That's honestly all this comes down to be. Does the conclusion you came to make sense? Does the end result serve you? Or is there something that you need to be more aware of, something that you think you need to change, or what have you? Is it just a situation that you need to let go of? This last step is when you get way further into things and really understand how to respect yourself and understand things up until this point. Everything to do with all of the previous steps, you're now going to get a solid basis for what's happening. What is this about? At this point, you'll know if a reaction, an emotion, a thought, or an interaction, a relationship maybe, is serving you or not. And what you'll discover is that your mind and body are far more in sync now, and can now help to guide you as to whether or not it's something to keep or get rid of. Even in the emotional situation of getting cut off in traffic, you'll find yourself getting to this point of whatever's right for you first and foremost. But in my case, it's more of a thing of like, whatever, nothing happened. I had to stop short. Okay. I gave the initial reaction or whatever, or I didn't, whatever. I had to stop short. Maybe they needed to get somewhere. Maybe they were in danger of being fired if they didn't get to work on time. Maybe they have an emergency going on that I don't know about. And it's hard, but it's important to take that time out of yourself. That's a part of being one with everything around you, is recognizing that there might be something beyond what you see, right? And the end result to this is a far more intricate experience of what causes stress in your body or in your mind, and how they relate to each other, and how to really pull your holistic self together, mind, body, and spirit, to grow and to learn with meditation. The possibilities are literally endless, not to be corny or sound whatever. But along this process, you'll discover things about yourself that you didn't know were there, and reach a completely new state of mindfulness and a completely new process in each of these situations. The best part is, as long-winded as this may feel or may seem, it'll become instantaneous. This will be your new reaction. Your new neural bridge is now built, and you have something to walk on to a brand new destination or a new way to get to the same old destination, rather than repeating the same old path or method and showing up with nothing, right? Once those new pathways are built, that's the only way you'll know or remember how to do it. And like I said, it takes time, but now that you've built that, it's important to recognize and important to give yourself credit for that and really live according to that new standard that you have set for yourself. Will there be setbacks? Sure, always. Will there be things that challenge you? Yes, constantly. But the point is that the things that start challenging you, when you look back and you've changed them or you've overcome them or you've addressed that challenge, each time you do it, you're just going to get stronger and stronger and better and more efficient at it. And when you look back on it, you're going to be like, I cannot believe that was even a challenge in my mind. And that's the magical part behind this. And not just leading into mindfulness, but establishing the important things about what help you control you better, and help you get a better idea of who you are and where you really need to be according to how you feel. We've been talking so far about, all the stuff involving meditation, with changing your mindset with meditation, with, how to trying to incorporate meditation through your everyday life in difficult situations. That was everything up until now. To right now, what I want to talk about is finding some of the wackier stuff having to do with meditation. I researched some things that, just to see what was out there and what people are having interesting situations with involving meditation, and just to see, what people come up with. And I found some kind of interesting stuff that I didn't really expect. Also, I wanted to talk about some unconventional ways to meditate. So I found some interesting things, definitely, and I wanted to talk about them. One of the things that I researched was losing feeling in your body, and this is something that I relate to. I've definitely felt and experienced it before, but I didn't realize what it was. And how they described it was in the process of learning to observe and be with your feelings and your thoughts, you'll begin to fall into this kind of these moments of bodilessness, as I call it. So it's actually really normal. What it is you're so focused on focusing on your thoughts and feelings that you're unaware of your body's presence in that moment. It'll happen. It's completely normal. You'll bring everything together and you'll relate your body's experience to what's going on around you. And if you're not looking for that, you can kind of shut it off. But it's literally just that. It's noticing your feelings, your body's emotions, the things happening all around you. And you're so focused on that stuff that you actually feel a disconnection from your body. And most people consider it kind of like an outer body experience type of thing, but it's completely natural. And I guess some people have gotten freaked out by it, but I just thought it was a part of it. There's something where when you're focusing so hard, just like losing focus on your body kind of begins to droop or like go slack or whatever. It's completely natural. The thought may pop into your mind where you realize that like you're bent over in half. That's an exaggeration. If you are bent over in half, you should realize that at some point. But like your head will kind of move. Some people reported like their heads swaying or feeling that body sway, or you lose, like, people who practice in the Om position. I forgot what the official title for it is, but that's what I call it. People who practice in the Om position, and they kind of put their hands on their their legs or whatever, kind of noticing like their shoulders starting to slump or something like that. It's completely common. It's nothing to get nervous about, nothing to get crazy about. Just when you do notice it and that thought pops into your mind, bring your awareness back to it. Stretch out your shoulders, sit up, or lay down, whatever you're doing, whatever feels comfortable for you. Just be comfortable in what you're doing and get yourself into a place where you can either hold yourself up or support yourself, or, like I said before, just lay down. It's nothing to get bent out of shape about. So some people have experiences with feelings or sensations of presences, either audible or in their minds, or feeling it. And this can be incredibly common. So like you'll feel something kind of brushing against you, or feel like a breeze against you, or, think you hear somebody like whispering or talking, or like some random noise. People report hearing all kinds of things. And it's pretty much just you getting used to your surroundings without any other noise involved. It's kind of like falling asleep and you all of a sudden hear like the dripping faucet from 2 floors away, like that type of thing. Like all of a sudden you are tuning in hardcore on that sound. It's kind of like that. It's sounds that are in your house every single day. And, when you're meditating, you feel them harder. Right now, I feel an actual little chill. The window's open, feels nice. But like if I was meditating, because I'm so focused on what I'm doing, if I was meditating, I would probably feel that cold a whole lot more intensely, or feel like the prickliness on my skin or something like that to go along with the sensation that I wouldn't notice on the average day. And especially as you're getting more further involved in in feeling your surroundings, you'll start to notice these things more and more, and then you'll start to piece together what they are. And it's the same thing as, if a thought pops into your mind, just appreciate the sensation for what it is and let it go. Feel it, let it go. Let it just happen, As you get closer to achieving something like a dreamlike state, you can feel disconnected from your body, like we talked about before, or disconnected even from yourself, like your self. A lot of people have reported these outer body kind of experiences, and it's a natural thing. Or like, if you don't recognize it as an outer body experience, you might see it as like seeing yourself in a third person view. Like I know I've had that experience, or at least that thought process, where I was like, oh, I feel like I can witness myself meditating. I feel like I see myself sitting there in the middle of the room. And a lot of people had this strong feeling. And it's, again, getting to know the energy and vibes that surround you and kind of envisioning that as what's going on, and taking a step out of yourself and realizing that, you're a separate entity from this vessel we call a body. And that's one of the basis of meditations when you get further and further into it. But these have been reported by people as well, like sensations of watching themselves like dream or sleep or whatever. People have often called it like lucid meditation, because that's what it feels like. It feels like you're having a lucid dream, watching yourself lucid dream. One of my favorite things, because to preface this, people with ADHD have a different perception of time. I think it's not just people with ADHD. It's, it expands to way more than that. But people with ADHD often experience it a lot compared to the regular masses. Also, people with autism, things like that. People with OCD at times, stuff like that. It's a part of hyper focusing, or honestly just being bored, whatever. But during meditation, you can experience time lapses, and you can go forward or backward, or kind of feel like you're frozen in time. And the cool thing about it is it teaches you a fundamental element of time, which is that it's a human-made concept, right? We understand time in a completely different way than somebody from a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth dimension would experience time. At the same time, somebody from the first or second or third dimension would experience time. It's all different, and it's all relative to what you experience and what you go through. So time as a label, as we understand it, is a human construct, right? When you're meditating, it's kind of like if you've ever went to a party, or you're playing video games, or you're just talking endlessly with like a good friend or a loved one, and you get lost in that conversation and you just start losing track of time. All of a sudden it's 4 hours later, right? All of a sudden it's 4 hours later, and you guys feel like it's only been like a half hour, maybe an hour, At the same time, if you've ever taken a test, or like read a boring book, or, had to work with somebody you can't stand, or you're in a doctor's office, for example, you know what I mean by because time stops, or time feels like it's going so incredibly slow that it might as well have stopped, right? That's the same type of situation, depending on what your mindset is, depending on where your mind is at that time. It's important to recognize and really feel that out, meditation can do this when you're focused, or when you're experiencing these otherworldly sensations, or getting used to your environment in some sort of way. You can sort of feel time around you, and that's, I say that in a sensational sense of like, you feel the breeze, you feel everything kind of working in slow motion. And once you get more advanced, you can kind of tune into that. You can tune into that to put yourself in the future. You're meditating on something, on a decision, for example, that you want to make. So you start thinking about the decision, and you start just letting it happen, and let the vibes flow, and let the feelings about it flow. And then all of a sudden you envision yourself in this position in the future, or in this area in the future, or whatever you're envisioning, and you're there. You can feel it. You know what's happening. Like, you are present in that moment. You can do it in the past, where you go through and you review, emotions and situations that have happened in the past, and not to relive them, but to examine them and observe them and learn from them and grow from them. Talking about the anger conversation last week, and talking about, the steps of deconstructing your feelings and getting into meditation deeper from, what we talked about previously. It's kind of that process, and it's using time to your advantage. You can get lost forever in a single moment, only to come back seconds later. You can feel like an eternity passed, and open your eyes, and it's only been 2 minutes. Or, you can literally close your eyes, feel like you've been there for a while, and, maybe it didn't move at all. Maybe you've just experienced that. If you've ever dreamed, and if you ever fallen asleep, and you've had like a dream. I've before had dreams that, those infamous falling dreams, where like I'd look at the clock, or I'd fall asleep, right? And then I dreamed that I was climbing this mountaintop, and I got to the top of the mountaintop, and there was a bed on top of it, and I laid in the bed, and then something happened where the bed fell off, and I jumped awake, and I look at the clock, and it's literally a minute later. So there's a time lapse involved, because the speed of your mind works different than when you're awake, as opposed to when you're sleeping, or when you're meditating, or when you're in a relaxed state. And it's the same kind of concept here. You can get yourself into those lucid states just by meditating. Sometimes as we get deeper and deeper into emotions and feelings, or lack thereof, as we talked about a couple minutes ago, people have reported noticing their breath changing, getting more shallow or quicker. Sometimes it can get slower and deeper. Think about taking a ride on a roller coaster, and now imagine that experience was just because you closed your eyes and thought of that experience, right? The same thing with envisioning yourself in a peaceful, area. It's a mindfulness tool called visualization. And it's an aspect of meditation. It's like an immediate meditation that you can utilize to get yourself out of angry moods, as we talked about before, or whatever, out of sad moods or whatever. Just bring you to a peaceful place. And it's really powerful because through these situations, people have noticed their body signs change, their blood pressure lower, their heart rate slow down, their breath getting, whatever the sensation is that you visualize. Or if it's the roller coaster scenario, it's the opposite. If that's something you enjoy and you want to get yourself into a fun, pumped up mood, visualize that. Use that as a tool and visualize that to get yourself in that mode, So visualization is, that's the cause of this. But like I said, the changing of the breath, the changing of the body signs and signals is is something that people experience during these visualization exercises and these meditation routines where you put yourself in that situation. Some honorable mentions are things like joints, body parts twitching. I know my wife experiences it when she goes to fall asleep. Her legs will start to twitch a little bit. Things like that, just signs that your body's slowing down. Joint or muscle pain for the same reason as simply being too distracted before to notice. So you meditate and you start feeling like, ow, my knee hurts, man, my knee's sore or something, and it might have been there, but you were able to ignore it because you were cleaning the house, taking care of the kids, going to work, doing all this other stuff that you were doing. And now you're not doing anything else. You're not doing any of that stuff. So you feel this ache or this pain, Also, part of the reason why they teach you body scanning when you meditate. And, that's a big part of it. How does my body feel? It's like checking in with yourself while you're meditating. And, that's a part of the correlation that we talked about before with correlating your breath with certain emotions. And that's part of the reason why, because people get tense, you get tight, you get angry, you get upset, your stomach starts to hurt, your breath gets faster, your limbs tighten up. I know people who used to get angry and they wouldn't realize it, but down, by their sides, they'd ball up their fist and they'd keep their fists so tight because they were so mad and they didn't even know it. And then when they release their fist, they'd be like, oh my God, my hand is cramped. I don't understand what's going on. And they didn't correlate it until somebody pointed out you were balling up your fist because you were pissed off, So it's that kind of thing. When you meditate, they teach you to body scan because it's to bring your awareness to what stage your body's at, what emotions you're feeling, and how to tie those together. And an honorable mention too is seeing strange lights. People claim that when their eyes are closed, I experience it at times when I'm trying to fall asleep, and I used to think of it as my eyes are trying to wake me up because I see these purple clouds. I don't know, you close your eyes, it's black, right? There's nothing there. It's just the dead of light. There's nothing there. And I see these purple hue lights floating past my eyes. And, at times I just sat there and just let them go and watch them. And eventually I fall asleep. But there's also a lot of times where I have focused my eyesight on where the lights are and kind of held onto it to see what would happen. And then almost reflexively, almost as a reflex, my eyes popped open. So I've always just considered that as my eyes are trying to wake me up. But there's a lot of people who experience those types of things when it comes to meditation, because that their eyes are channeling things. You're feeling the energy around you, your eyes are resting, the blood's getting to your eyes. There's a lot chemical wise going on inside your body when you're meditating, and a lot that's changing and sort of recalibrating and readjusting, and that's a part of that. That's why it's not just always black. Or if something passes by or something, you're meditating near a window and a bird flies by, you're going to notice that light change happens. And it's not necessarily anything supernatural, but sometimes you might feel like it is. Sometimes it's feeling the energy and the vibes around you, and seeing different spectrums of light that you wouldn't normally see because your mind wasn't open to that. Some strange ways that people get into meditation, or that people meditate, is maybe not as strange as you might think originally. I was expecting to find some crazy stuff. People standing on their heads, which there's a lot of resources and there's a lot of information out there. There's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of different ways that people meditate, crazy ways. So I just, wrote down the ones that I thought were interesting or that sparked something in me. The first one is sky gazing. And it's simply lying down with your vision fixated on the sky and letting your mind wander. And it's that old thing that you used to do when you were a kid and used to just lay down on the grass or lay on the roof or wherever you grew up and look up at the clouds and, just let your mind go and talk about whatever you're talking about with friends, or if you're by yourself, just listening to music or just staring off into the expansive sky. It's just, looking at the clouds, and that's one of the things. People don't realize it's a form of meditation, because when the clouds float by, that's one of the reasons why they take a shape. That's why they start to form into something, or that's why they spark like an immediate form. And different people see different things in the clouds and the sky designs and things like that. And that counts as meditation. That's what that is. It's an open eye meditation where you're just fixated on the expansion of the sky. And, you get lost in thought about like, wow, how big is the sky? Where does it end? And blah, blah, blah. That's a form of meditation. Another one that I found interesting that I forgot about until I read about it doing the research for this episode, mimicking nature or animals. And obviously the animal ones, I feel like they're more related to like tribal rituals and things like that. But I've seen situations where people would or like kids do it all the time. You like pretend you're a monkey, or so you sit on the couch like a monkey, or you pretend you're a cat. So you would climb something and just sit there like a cat or whatever. There's stuff like that. Where you kind of experience it as play, but it is a form of meditation because it's channeling into something else that's not you. And it's getting a deeper understanding of that thing through acting like that thing. I've also seen people standing outside, swaying in the breeze like grass or trees. I don't know really what it's called. I forgot it off the top of my head, but I've seen people who kind of like whatever they feel is the expression of the tree or the plant life or whatever, they'll kind of like hang their arms, or they'll just sway back and forth with the trees swaying in the breeze or whatever's going on. And even if it's just the wind blowing through like a desert or through like just a field, right? The wind blowing, they'll kind of like move their hand through the wind and feel it, you know what I mean? Or sway or dance with the wind. I've actually seen it in a cartoon too. In Disney's Moana, the grandmother sings about how she likes to dance with the ocean. And that's what she's doing. She's mimicking like the movements with her arms. She's mimicking the waves. So, I've definitely seen that. I've experienced that. I don't remember ever doing it myself, but I remember seeing it being done, whether in person or otherwise. There's also rituals. And as witchcrafty as that sounds, however you may feel about that, it's kind of like just whatever you do in your everyday. I'm going to get more into like a specific type of ritual that I thought was interesting. But, rituals like candle meditations, chakra-based concentration meditations, yoga, and even in some cases like exercises that you do, because exercises can become a ritual. And then you're fully involved in what you're doing in that moment, right? You're fully involved in the exercise. Maybe you're lifting an extreme amount of weight, or maybe you're just moving your body in a way that you really want to focus on, right? And that counts. That counts as it. As long as you hold on to that moment and are fully involved and invested in that moment, that's what makes it count. These techniques activate your senses, and they cause you to focus on a very specific part of your body or very specific things. And it's in order to expand your consciousness in some way in that moment. So that those definitely count as meditations. Standing meditations. There's all different ways to do it. I don't know if, during the last couple of streams that I've done, I've been standing up, at my standing desk. I tend to do a lot better when I stand. I focus a lot better. So I stand throughout my day. And it gives me things to do. Like, right now as I'm standing here, I'm moving my legs and moving my feet, and it helps me focus on what I'm doing. Without running around and acting crazy, and I discovered it when I was a kid, and maybe I'll talk about it again tomorrow, but I discovered it when I was a kid, and one of the teachers was like, noticed that I get out of my seat all the time, or that I lean my chair back, or that I, rock my desk or whatever. And she was like, how about if you don't mess with the other kids, you don't distract the other kids, you don't touch the other kids, things like that, how about I let you just kind of roam around the back of the classroom as long as you pay attention and you follow the rules? So I said, okay. And without even thinking about it, like, that was one of the best things that we ever did. And me and my mom remember that distinctly, because this teacher was amazing. And that was one thing that changed my school career and changed what I thought about school, because, now I had a way to focus that was acceptable, and people didn't care as long as I didn't bother them, It was a very cool thing. And that's when I started discovering that I meditate better in moments of like movement or whatever I'm doing, rather than sitting still most of the time. There's a technique also that I wanted to touch on called SAMU. SAMU, SAMU. It's SAMU work meditation, which is a form of Zen Buddhism meditation where you can take any portion of your day, regardless of what you're doing, and do it all at half speed. So everything that you're doing in that moment, if you bring it, if it's in your awareness, all of a sudden you're like, man, I hate stapling papers. And that could be your cue to like cue into that moment and literally do it at half speed, putting the papers down on the sheet and then lining it up with the stapler, hitting the staple through the paper, checking the pages to make sure that the staple went through. And they do this to involve awareness in you more intricately in your everyday life. Typing on a computer, what does the sensation of the keys feel like? What does the sound of the keys make? Do they make a sound? How does it feel when the key presses as opposed to releases? How long does it take the key to register on the computer? Things like that. And they insist on doing these things at half speed when the awareness arises, because of all these. It just changes your whole vibe and makes you so much more aware of every intricate sensation that's involved, from your skin cells interacting with the keys, and the sounds and the smells and the sensations. I can only imagine it being an amazing thing. I haven't tried it myself, but I do plan on doing that at some point. It's really taking a step into mindfulness and everything involved in everything that you do, and that's what I appreciate about it, and that's what I get so interested about when I read about this. You could do it in you can meditate in other ways. Some other like honorable mention ways that I found that people don't think about are eating, walking or running, traveling to work even. Most of the time it's involved in taking public transport, but like if you listen to music or listen to books on tape or just drive in silence and you're just present with everything that's going on, that's a form of meditation. That still counts. Eating, every bite that you take, what's the sensation on your tongue? What's the sensation in your teeth and your mouth? What are all the flavors that you're tasting? Can you taste everything that you put on that food? That's something that we often talk about in my nutrition coaching too. Pay attention to the sensations of the food. And that's one thing that people start to notice about like fast food and things like that. When you take a bite of the fast food or certain types of food, I'm not going to say it for everybody because some people quite enjoy fast food, and that's fine. Take a bite of the food that you're eating and really register in your mind whether there's enjoyable sensations involved. The texture of the food, is it too wet, too dry, or is it mushy, or is it hard to chew, or is it very like gritty to chew? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it spicy? Is it sweet? Is it savory? Is it bland? And a lot of the times that what people will do is like out of the packaged foods, like you just rip it open and eat it. A lot of the times they realize that these foods aren't really doing anything for them. And that's a sort of awareness that helps with what they eat, because they want to eat foods that are fulfilling them and doing something for them, and not just a bland experience, because then you just want more and you're just trying to, it doesn't fill you up as well. There's so much evidence out there to prove that a salad that's spiced the way you like it will fill you up more than a steak dinner if that steak dinner is bland or disgusting, right? And you'll still leave that steak dinner wanting more if it's not something that pleased what your body wants and what you mentally want. So definitely eating is a big one. Walking and running, the exercise stuff, like I said, traveling to work, just staying aware. And one of my recently learned favorite techniques is a koan meditation. I think it's a koan, Koan. I've read about it in an article entitled 9 Unusual Meditation Techniques You Should Try by Siobhan Harmer. I'll put the link for it in the show notes. But it says, koan meditation is a Buddhist technique from the Zen tradition, which involves asking questions that simply can't be answered with reasons and facts. Instead, the idea is to see the true nature of Buddha through unanswerable questions or koan. Some examples of beginner koan are, what is the face you had before your parents were born? And that sound, the sound that two palms make when they meet? What is the sound of one hand? And now that second one particularly caught my interest, because that's always one. It's kind of like, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around, can you hear it type of thing? Nobody knows. But that's the type of thing that you can meditate on and think about, It makes logical sense that somebody can hear it, but at the same time, if there's no animals, no people, nothing around to hear it, then nothing heard it. So you can't hear it, and stuff like that is just an interesting thing to be able to distract your mind and wrap your mind around something completely different. Or like, so like with that one, to me, there's a feeling to when you stop your hand or, whatever. And there's got to be a sound that we just can't hear. There's sensations involved with the hand. And that's what I start focusing on. All the senses that are involved with my hand moving in that clapping motion and then stopping, right? I can even feel it when my hand stops. What is that feeling? There's stuff like that this is revolved around. So there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Literally, there's hundreds upon thousands. I can't tell you enough times how many times you actually, or how many different ways you can actually meditate. It's impossible to quantify them all. Meditation and memories. What do they have to do with each other? There's a lot to do in the cognitive aspect of the brain with meditation in general. There's a lot that's been scientifically proven, and there's a lot of stuff that constantly comes out about why meditation is beneficial when it comes to your memory, your brain function, or whatever is going on in your mind, and can actually change the chemical makeup of your brain. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this segment of it and include that for this week's topic. And I wanted to kind of talk about my experience of what I remember going through with meditation as I was growing up in some cases, and something that's very near and dear to me, because it meant a lot. It meant a lot being the person that I am, and being the person that and being what I experienced through my childhood that I didn't really know. And that's kind of the point of this portion of the conversation, is to bring your awareness that you may already be meditating, or you may have already meditated in some aspects of the phrase and just not realized it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, just to bring your attention to it. I remember when I was a kid, I needed a lot of time to myself in my own environment. And we often thought that I was we always thought that I was an introvert. And to some degree I was very to myself in a lot of ways, but I was also very extroverted at the same time. So that tended to throw a lot of people off. But I would like to be by myself a lot in my own environment, surrounded by my own music most of the time, or nature itself. And that was really my hardcore go-to when it came to meditation: nature, music, and me. Of course, at the same time, I didn't realize that what I was doing in these situations of, collecting, like getting my own time and, just focusing on me, was that I was just meditating. I didn't realize that those were all different forms of meditation as I was growing up. I honestly just did it. There was this place growing up that I've talked about a few times, both on the podcast and on the channel before, and in my writings that are on my website, called we used to call it the Clay Pond when I grew up. And what it was it was like a rock quarry that owned a bunch of property around it, and they used to dig into, and sometimes like dynamite and stuff like that, these big mountainous hills of we didn't know what else to call it, so it was like clay and rock and stone and stuff like that. But when they reached like a really hard area to dig into, they would blow it up with dynamite, and that's how they would collect the rock from it or whatever. But they would make gravel with all these materials that they collected. So there was two huge like crater type things in the middle of a wooded area, right? And these things were like kind of like in a figure eight. I always remember. I always thought that was just weird. There was like a big old figure eight. And then off to the side of it would be like these other like clay hills or rock hills or whatever. And in the back would be like these bigger, way bigger hills. And we always used to go back there to play, jump, climb, run around, ride our bikes, do all this other stuff. Like I said, in the wintertime, we would use those hills for sleigh riding and for snowboarding and things like that. It was all in the middle of this like wooded area. It was really a beautiful place. I remember I would ride my bike through the woods, and the woods themselves were an adventure all on their own. And only like the most elite of us knew the trails like the back of our hand. I got to a point where I was pretty sure that I could ride at full speed with my eyes closed through these woods, but I didn't, because I'm also very clumsy. So but it was fun. It was adventurous. You got to know every little bit of these woods because I spent so much time back there. Even got so good at the like riding my bike up the side of the mountains. And when I say up, I mean these were easily 30+ foot hills. So you got to figure I'm 6'5". That's a bunch of me standing on top of each other. You know what I mean? Yeah, over the years, the landscape definitely changed, but I remember riding up these hills, and that was an accomplishment to work for that. You had to start from one side of the woods and ride full force to get all the way up these hills. And there was particular ways you had to go because your bike tires could get stuck. You can run over a rock and that ruins your momentum or whatever. And you started to recognize all these different ways, right? And it was just a magical place for me in my memory in my childhood. I remember that one day I just started going there on my own. Like I started going there with friends and family and things like that, and my brothers and sisters would go back there all the time. And it was like a hangout spot because we were in the country, you know, we were in like the woods type of area, and there wasn't really a whole lot else to do besides just get into trouble or go there, you know. And I remember I started going there on my own one day. I got out of school and I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to go hang out with anybody, but I do want to just hang out and just vibe with myself for a while. So I went there on my own with my Walkman, eventually a Discman with the 30-second skip protection for those old ones who know. I always thought that was funny, especially looking back on it. Like, you bought these things and you're like, wow, that's guaranteed. Every track is 30 seconds skip free. Yeah, that's what we had to deal with. But I would literally spend my whole day back there connected to nature, surrounded by the creek, the woods. The rock quarry itself was very close, but not close enough to bother us. And most of the time it was so covered by trees and woods that you didn't even know it was there. Like, it was so covered by terrain that you didn't even see the rock quarry there. You didn't even hear it there. Like, if all of the machines were working and the factory was running and things like that, you might have heard like a humming in the background, but it wasn't much more than that, you know? And so, you know, there was, like I said, you're surrounded by the creek, the woods, the quarry itself, you know, and there was so much for a mind like mine to do. Climbing, running, riding my bike, fishing, exploring, you know, the list goes on, skateboarding and all this other stuff, you know, just climbing trees and all this stuff, you know. If we went into the quarry area, there was plenty of trouble to get into, of course, don't tell anybody. But it stands out as a place where one second I would climb these massive clay hills, and the next we were in the middle of the woods with no sight of the clay pond itself even. Or we were crossing the Wappingers Creek or swimming in it or whatever. The creek was clean. The clay pond water was not. So we didn't go in there often. And if we did fish, we usually didn't like eat any of the fish from there. It was all from the creek that was behind it, because the creek water was clean and clear. But it was a magical place. You could hide away or be out in the open. You could switch your interest to be whatever you wanted to. You like whatever. If you had a split thought of like, okay, now I don't want anybody to find me, you can do that. Or if you had a thought of like, all right, I'm done climbing. I want to just lay in the woods and listen to the birds. You could do that. And it was awesome. Like, there's no way I can possibly quantify it in words and phrases. It was awesome. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was 100% my main source of meditation back in those days. When I began going less because of whatever, growing up, work, girls, whatever, I felt that disconnection, and that was something that I'm only now is realizing that was there. Literally at the time of writing my notes down for this episode, I was looking back on this memory and I was like, wow, that makes sense, because I had a very hard time at a certain point in my high school to my college career, and that was the time when I stopped going back there. That was the time when I stopped giving myself this connection. I felt that connection that I only realized was there, going back to what I said a minute ago. And around that time, I started smoking weed more than going to my place, which was that clay pond. I started forgetting that it was back there. I remember that I would look at the border of the woods from my house and think, damn, those were good days, you know? And I neglected to realize that those days could have continued, or I could have just found new woods, depending on where I lived, where I was. And, you know, it wasn't something that I had to get rid of, but it was something that I kind of forgot about because life got in the way. So, you know, as I was writing this, I felt a connection to that again. And I wrote to myself, I said, matter of fact, that's what I'll be doing with this around late spring until we can't anymore. I want to bring my kids to experience that important connection with nature and self and all these vibes and all these feelings and all these things. that openness, that one with nature that you can only feel while you're in nature. I have so many fond memories of that place that even the bad memories from there are good. You know, there's so many that I could talk about. I feel like that's better saved for another time. But, you know, ex-girlfriends being brought there, or, you know, friends that I'm not friends with anymore for whatever particular reason, or like if we got hurt back there or something like that. There's so many quote unquote bad memories that even those are good times because of the environment that it was. And so, you know, I want to share that with my kids. Like I was just saying, I wrote it very convolutedly. I don't know why, but I want to share that connection with my kids and expose them to that, because it's very important to feel a base and a sense of calm and relaxation and, you know, and I think that's very important to introduce into their lives. I remember we did go hiking once or twice before, but I want to make it like a way more common thing. I want them to know and to be fluent in going into the woods and hanging out and having, you know, that connection to it. You know, we're in a different environment where we live now, but if we ever did live in the country or have a big yard that had woods behind it or something like that, that would be a dream for me. But it's also something I'd want them to be connected with as well. So that was just one of my major memories of taking time for myself and really communing with nature and hanging out and just vibing and enjoying those meditational moments where I can still envision the peace that I had with the scenery that was surrounding me, with my Walkman headphones on, those really uncomfortable cheap metal ones, you know. And you know, I just remember so many good vibes from that area, and just it stuck, you know. And I wish that I could have taken more advantage of that back in the day and realized what I was actually going through, what I was feeling, and what that was, you know. But I feel like it's kind of my way of being able to pass it on, if that makes any sense. So to go on to another portion of my past that I remember with meditation, we talked about a candle method before of meditation, and that I used to do something along the lines of that. I didn't really know what it was, but it was, you know, it was one of the ways we talk about, one of the wacky ways that people meditate. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I remember a movie saying that be careful when you look into a flame, or be careful when you look deep into a flame. You can see its spirit, its soul, if you look deep enough. And it was like a warning to the person not to stare into the flame. I forgot what movie it was. I don't remember. But it was like basically saying that invites like bad luck or demons or something. And I was thoroughly intrigued, to say the least. I wanted to see what that was about, if anything. And so I lit a candle and stared into the flame, and I imagined the fire dancing as though it had like a human-like form. And I observed it moving with the slightest change in the breeze of the air that was surrounding us, or simply just doing whatever it wanted to do, even if the air was stagnant. I didn't realize that those moments were a form of meditation. You know, they talked a lot about trancing in and seeing things and hearing things and feeling your perception switch and change and play games with you because now it's free. And that's what it was doing. I was envisioning different things, and I was experiencing a different connection with the fire than just that it's a fire on a candle, you know. I didn't realize those moments were a form of meditation. I honestly felt weird about doing it, but I also at the same time did it, so I obviously didn't care either. I remember using all kinds of different methods to try to meditate, but the issue was that I wasn't really understanding what meditation was about. I thought it was to find your inner power, and in that way that TV had and movies told me it was, you know, that I'd end up being able to fly, or I'd all of a sudden know karate moves or something like that. Like, it was always a deep association with movies and TVs because that's what I based a lot of my childhood experience on, you know. Besides obviously going out and into nature. If I had done the work sooner or done the research and tried to meditate for myself, I honestly feel that I would be much further along in my path. I'd have a better understanding of myself and who I am than I had growing up, and get the chance to really know who I was. If only I knew what I was doing in those moments that I had felt so free and clear. That would have been such an amazing thing. And, honestly, it was an amazing thing. I got a gift from that. And the gift that I have is now that I've had those experiences, I can help my kids to understand these thoughts and perspectives, meditation, self-discovery, knowing what the good old days were while they're still happening. You know what I mean? That was a quote from The Office at one point where at the last episode, Ed Helms, I think it was, said, I wish you knew that these were the golden times or the good old days when they're happening. But I guess that's what makes them the good old times or the golden days. And that's kind of what I felt while writing that portion of this. That's my gift, to be able to share my awareness with them and help them advance and grow in powerful and healthy ways, and help them establish their own connection. They don't have to go out to nature and feel that connection or whatever. When my one son runs around barefoot all the time, and if given the chance, he takes his shoes off outside and he runs around barefoot all the time. So, he forms his own connection with that, and it's a gift of mine to be able to talk to him and help him see what that connection is and what he's feeling from that. So what interactions does meditation have with memory? As I started talking about in the beginning of this portion of it, meditation can act as a way to tap into the ability to see beyond the limits of time. You can place yourself in a past memory or floating through an empty void and allowing a memory to take you with it. And in those moments, there are powerful opportunities to re-observe these moments. This is your chance. This is your chance to get a new understanding of what once was instead of what you thought it was. And I feel like I need to constantly talk about this. When I talk about memories and living in the past, I don't mean living in the past. I mean being consciously mindful of the past so that you can get a better understanding. I do it a lot as a portion of self-reflection to see situations that I've been through and situations that I feel a certain way about might have been something completely different. And I think I talked about this in a previous episode of the podcast when I talked about anger. Some of those situations are not how you remember them. They're how you interpreted them at that time. So the important part is to go back in time and really get a fresh perspective for yourself, right? And so my approach to this is to play those memories like a video game. Take you out of yourself. Go back in time and play the roles of others in the situation. An interesting tactic to get a different perspective, regardless of what the perspective is in relation to. It doesn't just have to be with the people involved either. Pretend to be a plant in the environment, just watching the situation happen, or an animal that was a part of this memory. You'd be surprised. It sounds ridiculous, but you'd be surprised at the type of stuff you can come up with when you're looking at it from the perspective of an animal or a plant that's just being there. Like, you figure a plant is very non-responsive. There's nothing really feeding in or going out or whatever. It's very non-responsive in most cases as we understand it to the environment. So it's just there. It's just there observing, right? Or like an animal. A cat doesn't understand. A dog doesn't understand. They understand certain emotional stressors and things like that, but they don't understand the context of an argument that you got into with your spouse. They just understand that you guys are upset with each other, right? So take that into account. Look at it from that perspective. And how would you feel, Every day there's more and more research about meditation and the overall functioning of the brain. 20 minutes a day can support and boost the cerebral cortex of the brain. The cortex deals with mental functions such as learning, concentration, and memory. Regular meditation increases blood flow to the brain, which leads to a stronger network of blood vessels in the cerebral cortex and reinforces memory capacity. That kind of stuff I feel like we already know. But there was an interesting study that I found in doing my research entitled Meditation Effects on Cognitive Function and Cerebral Blood Flow in Subjects with Memory Loss, a preliminary study. That's a part of the title. It was a study that attempted to determine if subjects with memory loss problems demonstrate changes in memory and cerebral blood flow after an 8-week meditation program. The results state, quote unquote, the meditation program resulted in significant increases in baseline CBF ratios, that's cerebral blood flow ratios, in the prefrontal, superior frontal, and superior parietal cortices. Scores on psychological tests of verbal fluency, Trails B, and logical memory showed improvements after training. This preliminary study evaluated whether an 8-week meditation program resulted in improvements in neuropsychological function and differences in CBF, cerebral blood flow, in subjects with memory loss. So it's saying that it ended up that they found that these 8 weeks of only meditational practices increased the blood flow to their brain, and it helped the actual cognitive functioning of their brain. They go on to say, while the findings are encouraging, there are a number of limitations that can be addressed in future studies with more participants and more detailed analysis. In this portion of it, I expect any good study to include. It's kind of their way of saying, but hey, if we find out 10 years in the future that we're wrong, blah, blah, blah. And it's always that thing that, like, especially with stuff like this, you want to be very sure to give concrete evidence of what's going on. So it's their way of saying, we're going to investigate this and we are going to look further into it. You know what I mean? As they should. It should never stop being tested and integrated and, be seen as a part of science. People often consider this stuff very metaphysical and very supernatural related, and it's not. There's science behind it. But yeah, that portion of it's called good science. I wanted to include that so that there's, a good amount of transparency involved. Again, that was from iospress.com, and it was a study based on the meditation effects of cognitive function, cerebral blood flow in subjects with memory loss. It was from a Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. So there are numerous other scholarly papers, medical journals, documentation, studies and studies and studies that support the same types of claims that meditation can do worlds of wonders in aiding for your overall cognitive ability, including decreasing memory loss and increasing recovery of some memories as well. A lot of studies have found that the more you meditate and the more you practice this sort of mindful practice, the more you unlock from your brain. And repressed memories or memories that have just gone away because the brain considered them as waste, come back, and you might find some little gems in there. You might find some scary stuff, which is something else that you can address in meditation to help that process. But it's nothing to be afraid of. It's all a part of self-discovery. It's a very interesting idea to think that such a simple thing can help in so many incalculable ways, or as Michael Scott says it, incalculable. And yet, as humans, we've barely begun digging into the surface of what potentialities the gift of meditation holds for us all. And even crazier, it's something that's right there, right in front of us, free of charge to use as we please. You literally can't get enough of it. In the spirit of building and working on and improving a meditation practice that's right for you is exactly just that. It's a practice by you, for you, to fit your schedule, your time, and your needs. It's not with anybody else involved. It's not the end goal being, anything to do with anybody else. It's focused on you. So that's the part of meditation that I find is most important. It's a connecting piece to get to yourself, right? To find a deeper level of relationship with yourself. It just depends on what you need, basically. Not all of us need silence or imagery or bells or gongs or video games, even though I've used them. Or even monotonal music to help us meditate, like those what are they, miracle tone songs or whatever. Like, if you use them, and if it works, it works, but the point is that it works for you. Some of us need the exact opposite of those. I know for me, I can meditate while I'm working out, listening to heavy metal music and doing all that stuff, so it just depends on what your needs are, what your mood is, and where you're at, you know what I mean, where your mentality's at. I fully believe that after you establish your meditative practice, you can learn to meditate under any conditions, regardless of what initially worked for you, what works for you now, what used to work for you. I think that once you gain the practice and get your feet wet, so to speak, with how you're comfortable doing it, you can evolve to do it under any conditions, even while you're not in a meditative state, quote unquote. So I have a few steps that I've found after doing some research that people have used to help them establish a proper practice for them. The main step, the number one thing, is to get comfortable, right? No matter the situation that you're in, you probably won't have a very easy time getting into a meditative state if you're uncomfortable where you are, or how you're sitting or standing, or if you need to use the bathroom or anything like that. If there's something distracting you, an annoying noise in the background, for example, something like that, get yourself to a tolerable level of comfort. However you have to. If you have to disconnect yourself from the situation, move to another room, put some headphones on, or, throw down pillows on the floor, whatever you need to do, that's what you got to do. And it, make it work. You want to start small. You want to go back to your breath. There it is again. I'm going to say it every single time I talk about meditation or controlling an emotion or making an emotion flow properly. Go back to your breath. That's the basic, most simplest thing that you could possibly do to initiate this whole process, or to make any sort of change, to collect yourself in the moment. Just be still, or slow your pace if you can't be still. I'll get more into that later. Practice scanning your body or emotions and feel your feelings, or really just let your mind go crazy with, where's your body at? What are you feeling? What sensations are in your body right now? What are you feeling in your mind, in your soul? Like, what are you going through? What thoughts are racing? Are they angry thoughts, happy thoughts? You don't have to worry about getting into the analytical stage of it yet. Just worry about observing and watching, and just breathe with it and be with it. Let it happen. I often get asked the question, how do I carve out time for meditation in my day? I'm so busy. Everything's so crazy. You have things going on. And the truth is, you just got to do it sometimes. You don't worry about carving out time for meditation. Worry about incorporating meditation into your day. And that's the best way that I found to be able to do it, is to, instead of take time specifically to sit somewhere and practice calming breaths or whatever, in the moment, sometimes I'll be doing work, or I'll be doing exercise, or I'll be, angry or upset or going through some kind of craziness or whatever. And in that moment, like I've talked about before, there's things that you can kind of latch onto that, like, triggers for yourself, where you notice, like, okay, now is a good time. Now is a good time for me to get back to my breath, And they're talking about, we're talking about using, like pairing your meditation with a habit or a hobby or activity. A lot of people do it when they're brushing their teeth. They say 2 minutes to brush your teeth or whatever, or you sing like a birthday song, or you go through any of those motions to wash your hands, brush your teeth, do things like that. And, that's your time. While you're doing it, just slow yourself down and notice what you're doing. Take in the sensations of what's going on and just be present in that moment. That counts as a meditation, and that'll start building up that neural bridge to be able to perfect that practice even further. So, starting with guided meditation can help some people. I know I get distracted by voices a lot. So, the caveat here is that some people may find spoken word very, very distracting. So what I would recommend if you're one of those people is to find music or a beat that your mind can go in sync to. Anything, even this beat that's in the background now. You hear that one snare drum. So whenever it beats every couple of to the rhythm or whatever, right there, right there, right there. It's very methodical. It's very slow paced. Time your breath with that, or just time your thought process with the beat of the music. If you can be listening to EDM or metal or something like that, you could be listening to something crazy and still have your thoughts go to the beat of whatever's going on. It doesn't necessarily have to be your breath. It can be, the thoughts that are coming to you. Try to, get them in sync with the beat, or find a beat that works with, it just feels right. So, envisioning things like lights or shapes or something that syncs to the beat is also, a distracting thing if the thoughts don't really work for you. Just put on a light show in your mind, close your eyes and envision being on stage and seeing these lights, or being in a crowd and seeing these things go by. Or, try to listen to something that flows with your breath comfortably, like ocean wave sounds. If you're that type of person that can listen to sounds of nature and birds chirping and things like that. That stuff can affect your breathing, how calm you feel. It can affect your thought process. So make sure it's something that relates to something you like. Maybe sounds of the forest aren't your thing and you are more of a beach person, so go with that. Maybe you like thunderstorms, so go with that. It just depends on what you find calming and what you can kind of get in sync with. If all else fails and you need something that's, more distracting, for lack of a better term to put it, to try to preoccupy your mind, try a metronome, or like a counter, something that like clicks to an interval, and just try to focus on that. It's something you can count with. It's almost like counting sheep to put yourself to sleep. It's beginning that process of putting yourself in that meditative, calm mind state. I have a video to share on this, but another thing is to practice what's called pranayama, which is the technical term for what I called yogic breathing, where you cover one nostril, you inhale, you exhale through the other nostril, and you switch back and forth like that for a couple of rotations. It's there's a couple of different practices, which is why I want to share a video about it. But this is kind of related to taking you back to your breath, and even if you have a stuffy nose, you can incorporate this breathing practice, like I've talked about before. You just envision yourself doing it rather than doing it physically. It still works, because when I've had a cold or a stuffy nose or whatever, I've done it, and it works quite well. So that's another important thing right there. Something to remember is to, set yourself with an attainable goal. Set yourself, and I know I used to hate people saying that, because it's like, well, whatever. Like it's so up to interpretation in some ways. But especially with something like this, like, don't go crazy. A lot of people see success when they didn't even think they were really doing anything. They were taking just minimal steps. And after a while, they were like, wow, I really am way further along than I thought I would be. So just set something attainable. Even if it's easy at first, it'll grow. It'll grow, beyond where you thought it would. Take your time, focus on what that is, and go slow. Whatever you're doing, slow it down. Be mindful of everything involved with your doing. Touch, taste, smell, sound, visuals, everything. I forgot the name of it that we talked about previously, but it's a Buddhist practice where, even in the act of it, the only thing that you can think of is picking up your phone. Slow it down. When you go to reach for your phone, just feel the muscles that are involved with your arm movement. Go to pinch the phone, the muscles that are involved in your hand movements, the feeling of the phone texture on your fingers, everything that's involved in the process, the smell of the phone that you don't usually notice until you slow down to this degree. I think the recommended speed was to do everything like quote unquote half speed. So take that and run with it. And that can be your beginning meditative process. That can be something that starts you off with it, you know. If you need to, there's hundreds and hundreds of apps. There's Headspace, Calm, Breathe, My Life Meditation. I do have a link that I'm going to throw up in the description to share it. Now, a lot of these apps I have not used personally, but the source that I got, it's a website called healthline.com. I fully trust the source, and they have a lot of great information. They usually do a lot of great research and gathering background information for their articles. So it's a source that I trust. So I wanted to share that with you guys as well, but I have not used them myself. So try an app, something that's going to talk you through, or, something that works with settings. I think when I read about it, either the Calm app or the My Life Meditation app had like super settings where you could set it to exactly what you wanted every single time and how you wanted to progress and things like that. Or if you consider it this way, the video game that we've been incorporating into the stream this week, playing the meditation game, quote unquote, that can be an app too, not an app on your phone, not yet. But, it's something that guides you. It's something that teaches you what you're doing. It's something that monitors your meditations for you. And it's, just something to help you out. If you want to try an alternative method, that might be your way to go. If the traditional methods aren't something that you fall in sync with easily for whatever reason, try something different like we talked about on Thursday or Wednesday. Try something different that we talked about before. Light a candle, and just watch the flame dance. Put on some music if you have to. Go outside and get lost in your favorite environment, whatever that may be. If it's a city, or if it's, a forest, or if it's a beach, or whatever it is. A frozen tundra, who cares? Go outside and enjoy it. Try different meditation techniques like tapping, chakra focused practices, which there's a bunch of different ways to get into that if you know anything about the chakras. Energy focus, one interesting way that I used to do that I also read about that apparently is a big thing, but I didn't know that at the time. I just was kind of messing around with it. Is you close your eyes and you kind of most people recommend that you rub your hands together really hard. You rub your hands together and then you separate your hands and you feel like an energy involved. I was able to envision this energy between my hands and not physically feel it. So it just depends on what you need. If it's easier for you to feel it that way, then go ahead, rub your hands together really hard and feel it. And what they said was to try to shape the energy into a ball, and just imagine that you're holding this ball. You can feel the weight of it. You can feel the movement of it, passing it between your hands. Sometimes I would imagine that there's a current between my fingers, that I was, moving my hands or arcing or, having it flow in between my fingers. And it was a good way for me to envision meditating and focusing on body energy and things like that. So that can be a pretty cool one too. There's literally hundreds of thousands of alternative methods. If you guys want any more information on any of the millions out there, I can definitely supply you with some information. Just hit me up on my socials or wherever you need, and I can give you some information on some cool stuff. I didn't put this one at the top of the list because I find it very distracting, and I feel that meditation's a very personable thing for you to learn yourself, to get to know yourself. But if you're the type of person that learns better in groups or associates themselves better in groups or is more comfortable in groups, try group meditation. That might be your way to go, is to experience the vibe of everybody around you. There is a good part of that. But like I said, most of the time meditation involves the self, and most people aren't ready to get into the feeling of I am one with the universe immediately when they start to meditate. Most of the time it's just for a quick kind of moment, you know what I mean? Or it's to work up that to that level, which is why I've been focusing mainly on single person focused practices. But group meditations, if that works for you, go for it. I find stuff like that a little distracting, but now that I'm talking about it, I'm thinking of like feeling the vibe in the room, for example, would be something that I'd be interested in at some point. So something I can work up to. There's also ways to like initiate the process of meditation besides like going back to your breath. If you're having problems even focusing on that, one, it seems silly, but one kind of cool concept that I read about was to yawn or stretch or both. And the theory behind it is that when you do these things, like envision yourself yawning, make yourself yawn, even if it's a fake one, I can guarantee you can get at least a good solid hardcore sigh out of it. You know what I mean? Yawn, stretch, and kind of act like you're tired, like you're getting ready for bed or something like that, and really get into it. Really put your mind in that mode. This will trick your body into getting into sort of that calm pre-dream state where you're getting ready for bed. Your brain and your body will start to feel like you're getting in the mode to go to sleep. So it calms you down. It relaxes you. And stuff like that are triggers for your mind and your body because it's involved in the process of sleep. So even faking it, it'll work. You just gotta go for it. Shaking your body out, we tell kids to do it all the time. We tell, before we work out or while we're lifting or whatever, or while we're running or doing whatever, you shake your body out. And before meditation, it might seem like a counterintuitive thing to get yourself kind of amped up and shake, but it's actually really effective of literally shaking out your anxieties, your stressors, anything in your mind or body that might be ready to trigger a negative or even just active responses. It shakes it out. And for a hot second when you're done, it's a kind of like a moment, even before when you're getting amped up to like work out and you shake your body out. That moment where you stop, that's the moment you focus on. Immediately after you shake your body out and you're about to start doing something, focus on that moment in between, because now you've shaken out all your stressors, all your anxiety, all your energy, and you have nothing but calmness in your body in that moment. By doing this, you shake out things like foreshadowing about stressors, even with, if you live with kids, animals, whatever's going on, if you have something you feel like you might interrupt your meditation practices, that'll help. It'll help get those anxious thoughts out of there. It's also good for circulation, to activate some core parts of your healthy blood flow and your healthy body responses while you're meditating. Like meditating in general helps blood flow to the brain, as we talked about previously, but this helps kind of continue that blood flow to the rest of your body. You'll notice things like you won't get sore when you stand back up, or you won't feel uncomfortable while you're sitting because you have a good healthy blood flow going. One that I just learned about is a 3 things practice, and I thought this was very cool. I want to try it myself. It kind of relates to koan meditation, which is asking yourself unanswerable questions that your mind can focus on playing with. So we talked about this a little bit previously. It's about asking yourself unanswerable questions. But this takes a different approach to it. It's an interesting introduction to meditation because, to start, you simply state to yourself things like 3 things I hear are children laughing, car horns, or, the wind. Car horns may not be relaxing, but if it's what you hear, it's what you hear, right? 3 things I see are, white walls, birds flying, anything. 3 things I feel on the outside are, 3 things I feel on the inside are, 3 things I smell are, 3 things I taste are. So it's kind of like teaching you body scanning, but you're expressive with it, right? But it's to focus on 3 things, move on. 3 things, move on. And that'll help you initiate thoughts and let them go. And that's part of meditation, So I thought doing this practice was very, very cool because you can acknowledge your environment, you can acknowledge thoughts, you can acknowledge all this stuff that you're feeling, and you can practice letting it go because you have those 3 things. And once you think about them, okay, they're done. Time to go. But yeah, I found that very cool. I when I read that, I was like, ooh, that's a good one. I like that. On those very distracted days, you can actually talk yourself through it, you know? Just to sum up this stuff, lastly and firstly, the most important step to meditation is to have patience with yourself and understand that this is a process. Sometimes an extremely lengthy process, sometimes it's immediate. You could also go back and forth between the two based on the day, the week, the month, the year, your state of mind, your emotional health, your physical health. It all depends on you. This is meant to be a lifelong practice and focus. Before you know it, you'll be further along than you are right now, no matter what level you're at. And that's really the beauty of it. It's for you at your own pace, like I said previously, in your own time, in your own way. This is about you. And you are worth every bit of energy that you put towards this practice. You're worth every bit of energy that you put towards working on yourself. So thank you guys for watching this episode. This week's theme has been about meditation. We've gone through all kinds of different stuff. I hope you found this information helpful. If you want, I have all the links to everything in the show notes and in the description below. Hit me up on any of my socials. Also in the description below. Join the Discord if you like. Check out my webpage for any of my services. If you have any questions to ask, or you want to share it with somebody, like, comment, subscribe, pass this on, and let's get this community growing. Have a good one, guys.